Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 71, and the chapter is Self-Consecration. We'll read a little bit before the newest paragraph. Beginning with the intellect has been interested. Thank you.
So, in the paragraph before, but if we desire, okay, that's what we have to read today. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th line from the bottom, the intellect has been interested. Okay, we read from there. Here he is talking about in this para, I'll do one thing. I'll read out the summary to you, and then we'll come back to this sentence.
Yes.
Okay. So what he's saying here, in this para, the slow awakening. Remember that he has spoken about two types of awakening. The first is a sudden change. Maybe the soul has prepared itself through many lives, and suddenly something happens. Either you get a flash of light, or you have an experience, or you suddenly go out of your body, or there's a very unpleasant experience. It can even be a pleasant experience, I think, but usually it's an unpleasant experience that wakes you up. So that's what he has said. When that happens, then your destiny is very sure, because it is a very powerful beginning. But sometimes the awakening is very slow. So that's what he is discussing in this paragraph, which I am going to now read the summary. Okay, so the slow awakening to the necessity of a spiritual life is more frequent than the sudden leap into the inner life. You won't find the text here. I am summarizing. Yes. Okay, so from the hesitant, incomplete start to the final acceptance by all the parts of nature and the full need for Godward aspiration, there is often a long period. In some cases, the mind may be attracted and some partial practice may commence. Often, the whole being, mostly the vital, does not participate in the Godward attempt. A long period of preparation may intervene, or a fresh start is not even contemplated. It could also be that a midway arrest occurs because of a defect in determination or sustained effort. There can be a return to the ordinary physical life. Sometimes the superficial parts may take interest in yoga, but the central being lacks the complete interest. The central being, Srimanda uses the word central being for the self as well as the psychic being. Okay, that's the central being. The rest of it is all peripheral being. Your body, your mind, your life, these are all perishable parts of your being. Okay, so. But even such cases are not failures, because no effort upward is ever wasted. Okay? The soul's ultimate future has been secured. This is what he says. So now we will read that part where the intellect has been interested. He is describing to you that part of your being is ready to change, but there are other parts which are not so ready. So that's what we are going to read now. The intellect has been interested. Note the word interested only, not captured. It is interested. The heart attracted. The will has strung itself to the effort. Okay? But the whole nature has not been taken captive by the divine. You have to become a prisoner of the divine consciousness to be able to pursue that. You have no choice. You have to do it.
He even says the heart is attracted.
Yes, that's
not
right.
Given,
that's
attracted.
Right. So these are the words interested. Intellect is interested, the heart attracted, the will has strung itself to the effort. Okay, a very interesting word, strung itself.
Yes.
And the whole nature but the whole nature has not been taken captive by the divine. It has only acquiesced in the interest. It has agreed to the interest, the attraction or the endeavor. So, interesting, he is using three words: acquiesce in the interest, the mind; attraction, the heart; and the endeavor, the will. So, he is repeating what he said earlier with different words. Okay? There has been an experiment, perhaps even an eager experiment, but not a total self-giving to an imperative need of the soul or to an unforsakable ideal. Even such imperfect yoga has not been wasted, for no upward effort is made in vain. Even if it fails in the present or arrives only at some preparatory stage or preliminary realization, it has yet determined the soul's future. So, if it's a sudden awakening, the destiny is sure and much faster. But if it's a slow awakening, there can be ups and downs, there can be vicissitudes, there can be all sorts of problems. But the destiny ultimately is sure. That's what he's saying. So now we read the next para. But if the desire to make the most of the opportunity that this life gives us, if we wish to respond adequately to the call we have received and to attain to the goal we have glimpsed, not merely advance a little towards it, it is essential that there should be an entire self-giving. The secret of success in yoga is to regard it not as one of the aims to be pursued in life, but as the one and only aim, not as an important part of life, but as a whole of life. This reminds me of one of our students who told me, I asked him whether you are going out after your studies or are you going to remain in the ashram. So he says, that's exactly what Swami is discussing. He says, well, everybody is going for one profession. Somebody is becoming a journalist, somebody is becoming a scientist, somebody is studying literature, this, that. So I am going to be here, this is going to be my profession. So that is not what the attitude should be. That is exactly what he's saying. He may not have used the word profession, but an occupation, okay. But so others are doing that, I am doing this. But that's not, he says the whole of life, okay. It's not just one thing to be done. He's saying to regard it not as one of the aims to be pursued in life. That's not it. But as the one and only aim, and not as an important part of life, but as the whole of life. But Mother says also very clearly that the sincerity can never be absolutely 100% in the beginning, because we are made of imperfect body, imperfect vital, imperfect mind. So it's a slow progress towards perfection. But if the central being has taken the decision, your destiny is sure.
How does one know that the central being has chosen?
If it's a slow beginning, you don't know. But if it's as he said, a sudden awakening, then it is more sure. But it's true that you don't know whether the central being has chosen. That usually happens when the entry into the spiritual life is slow. There is a gentleman who has just passed away in the ashram 5 or 6 days ago. His name was Arvind Sule.
Arvind Sule?
Yeah.
I knew him very well.
You knew him well?
Very good.
Okay. So, he had an interview with the archives, and in that interview he said that when he came here he came very early 40s or even late 30s, he came here, and he was wanting what is called initiation, Diksha, he wanted. But Srivendra told him that in my yoga there is no Diksha, you will automatically come to know that you are meant for this life. So he says that, okay, I don't know, but usually in our Indian yoga, you are initiated into the yoga by the Guru. But here Srimad is saying nothing. But within 6 months, he had an awakening of the psychic being. That was his initiation. So he says, now I'm sure that yes, this is my path.
You have not seen his book?
No, I haven't.
It's brilliant. Brilliant book.
Yeah.
When I spoke with Alok, he said this man could never have written it as he was. It had to be the highest source. Now we move on to a new paragraph.
Yeah. And since, it's interesting, the previous para is but, it's beginning with a but, and this para is beginning with an and you are told by those who teach you how to compose English.
You never start with an
Never
and or a
begin
but.
Never begin a sentence with but and. Here is Srimad doing that. Okay, so. And since yoga is in its essence a turning away from the ordinary material and animal life led by most men, or from the more mental but still limited way of living followed by the few, to a greater spiritual life, to the way divine, every part of our energies that is given to the lower existence in the spirit of that existence is a contradiction of our aim and our self-dedication. On the other hand, every energy or activity that we convert from its allegiance to the lower and dedicate it to the service of the higher is so much gained on our road, so much taken from the powers that oppose our progress. It is the difficulty of this wholesale conversion that is the source of all the stumblings in the path of yoga. For our entire nature and its environment, all our personal and all our universal self are full of habits and of influences that are opposed to our spiritual rebirth and work against the wholeheartedness of our endeavor. In a certain sense, we are nothing but a complex mass of mental, nervous, and physical habits held together by a few ruling ideas, desires, and associations, an amalgam of many small self-repeating forces with a few major vibrations. What we propose in our yoga is nothing less than to break up the whole formation of our past and present, which makes up the ordinary material and mental man, and to create a new center of vision and a new universe of activities in ourselves, which shall constitute a divine humanity or a superhuman nature. So, let's look at what he's saying. And since yoga is in its essence a turning away from the ordinary material and animal life led by most men, or from the more mental but still limited way of living followed by the few, to a greater spiritual life, to the way divine, every part of our energies that is given to the lower existence in the spirit of that existence is a contradiction of our aim and our self-dedication. If you read little carelessly, it raises a problem. So you have to be very careful. Srimad is saying, yoga is in essence a turning away from the ordinary material and animal life. But on the other hand, he's saying, don't give up the physical world. So there seems to be a contradiction here. But in its essence, it's a turning away from the material and animal life by most men, but from the more mental and still limited way of living, followed by a few to a greater spiritual life. Every part of the energy that is given to the lower existence in the spirit of that existence. That's the important, that's the key part. You are doing everything in the physical world, okay? Let's take very simple things. I am eating because I enjoy food. And now you are, that's in the spirit of that lower existence. But now when you are eating, you are not doing it in the spirit of the lower existence, but you are offering it to the Lord and eating. So you have to turn. That spirit should not be of the lower type. So that's the interesting part. So there's no contradiction in what he's saying. But he's saying that after 4 or 5 phrases. So you have to note that, okay? Every part of our energy that is given to the lower existence, in the spirit of that existence, your whole attitude, whatever you are doing, you can do it in 2 ways. Okay? I can do the work because I want success. That's a lower spirit. But I am doing the work because it's been given to me and I am offering that work to the divine. That's not in the spirit of the lower. So, turn everything towards the divine. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, on the other hand, every energy and activity that we can convert from its allegiance to the lower, there you are. The allegiance to the lower, we have to turn it to the allegiance to the higher, the aspiration. Okay, so. And dedicate to the service of the higher is so much gained on our road, so much taken from the powers that oppose our progress. So the more you go inwards or upwards and less outwards, you are benefiting. That's what basically he's saying.
But he also speaks of the powers that oppose our progress.
Yes, that's right. So the more you turn your normal activities outwards and do it for yourself, those are the powers that will take full advantage of you and oppose your. But the moment you change all your normal activities towards the divine, then those powers will not have so much power over you. And what are those powers? Your vital desires, your mental preferences, attachments. These are all the lower powers that will delay your progress.
Oh, even mechanically.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, and you have addressed that before. Please share that again.
That's right. In the beginning, it is mechanical. Later on, it's not mechanical anymore. It becomes automatic, and also there is emotion. In the beginning, it may be mechanical without emotion, but that's the starting point. Remembrance all the time.
Mother says, remember and offer.
Remember and offer. Remember and offer. And that remembrance is very interesting. Okay? I tell the children, because most of them nowadays, they have bikes. They come to knowledge on your scooters and motorbikes and all. So I tell them that when you are riding you are coming out of your house, think that mother is sitting on the pillion behind you. So that's the type of remembrance that you have. So every time, and the activities are structured in the ashram in such a way that this remembrance is encouraged. When you start your school, there is a meditation for 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes normally. And then at the end, there is nothing in the school. But in the playground, you have a concentration for 2-3 minutes before you start your activities. And then at the end also, you are all made to stand in a line and 2 minutes of concentration. So, this beginning and end concentration, slowly, it covers the whole activity. In the beginning, it's only the beginning and end, but slowly it covers. I have a very interesting image for that. In the tennis ground, you've been to the tennis ground?
Oh, yes.
You have seen that along that parapet wall, there's a patch of grass.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen that? The basketball courts don't have grass, but there's a small patch of grass. Now that patch of grass doesn't extend everywhere. But one day they decided to extend it elsewhere also. So what did they do? They took a little bit, put a small patch here, put a small patch here, put a small patch here. And slowly, that grass covers the whole place slowly. So exactly this. Remembrance in the beginning is a patch. The remembrance at the end is a patch. Slowly, slowly, it will extend and cover your whole life. So that's what you have to do. Remembrance and offer. Remember and offer. So, it is this difficulty of this wholesale conversion that is the source of all the stumblings in the path of yoga. For our entire nature and its environment, all our personal and all our universal self are full of habits and of influences that are opposed to our spiritual rebirth and work against the wholeheartedness of our endeavor. Note, he is saying, all our personal and our universal self. Even when you have gone into the level 2, the spiritual planes of consciousness, there also there are problems. All these problems disappear only at the third level in the supermind. There is a very interesting thing what they say. Because there is activity in the lowest, level 1, in the physical world there is activity, there is movement, so your progress can be much faster here. But the moment you have realized and you become, you are a soul in the subtle world, in the spiritual world, you can progress, but it is much slower. But here it is much faster. You are much more in imperfection here, but you can progress faster. And when you go into the spiritual world, you are much purer now. But if you want to go further up, it is slower. The opportunity given in the physical world is huge, and we should not waste that. In a certain sense, we are nothing but a complex mass of mental, nervous and physical habits held together by a few ruling ideas, desires and associations, an amalgam of many small self-repeating forces with a few major vibrations. What we propose in our yoga is nothing less than to break up the whole formation of the past and present, which makes up the ordinary material and mental man, and to create a new center of vision and a new universe of activities in ourselves, which shall constitute a divine humanity or a superhuman nature. So, there is the image very often of the remodeling, and this can happen also at the physical level. There is a remodeling of the brain, there is a remodeling of the vital, and a rebuilding, a renovation. The past has to be, if you have an image of a house, okay, and it is getting dilapidated, then sometimes you repair it, but you also make renovations. You add a room here, you pull down a wall there. This is what has to be done in the yoga also. So very often the image is that of a house being totally renovated. That's what the yoga is all about. A rebuilding. And Sri Aurobindo says something very interesting. When his mind was being rebuilt, okay, there is a pressure on the head. So some people ask him that when I am concentrating, I feel a pressure on the head. Okay, so Sri Aurobindo said that's normal because the higher consciousness is trying to enter, but the pressure is because of the resistance. So he says, I used to feel as though someone is drilling my head.
Oh.
He used the word drilling. So that is the extent of the renovation. That has to be done. Then the vital has to be changed. So a lot of things have to be broken down and rebuilt. Even the body undergoes changes. There was a gentleman in Auroville. Now he is not there. I can even take his name. But better not. He used to work in Matra Mandir. He was also doing yoga and he was seeing changes in his body. So he mistook it for a supramental transformation. But that's not it. When you are doing yoga, there are changes that occur in the body also. There are changes that occur in your mind. You will start saying, I am thinking in a totally different way. There's light also coming into my mind. My vital is much purer than it was before. There's a rebuilding that occurs. And there are changes in the body also. So he took it for transformation, but it's not transformation. That's very, very far away. So that's what he's saying here. See, he's saying, create a new center of vision and a new universality between outside which shall constitute a divine humanity or a superhuman nature. Note the words. What we propose in our yoga is nothing less than to break up the whole formation of our past and present. There is a total breaking up of the past and rebuilding.
Which he calls an amalgam of many small self-repeating forces.
Yes. If we look at ourselves, we'll see that our way of thinking is repetitive. If we see also our vital habits, what is a habit? It goes on repeating itself. Mm-hmm. So this is what he's talking about. Even physically, sometimes there are habits, physical habits, which go on repeating. So these repetitive movements in the physical, the vital and the mind have to be broken. There should be no more repetition of the old systems. And another thing we should note also, he's saying, in a certain sense, we are nothing but a complex mass of mental, nervous, physical habits. Why is he saying that? Because that's what we normally feel. This is what I am. This is my mind, this is my vital and my body. But saying, in a certain sense, we are this. But you are not only that, you are also the soul, you are also the psychic. One day we discussed that, na? You are your subconscious, you are your inconscient, you are the intraconscient, and you are also the superconscient. Last time I didn't mention the circumconscient also you are. The circumconscient is your aura.
Yes.
This is what you are, but you are not conscious of it. So all that you have to become. That's a yoga. We read the next para. The first necessity is to dissolve that central faith and vision in the mind which concentrate it on its development and satisfaction and interests in the old externalized order of things. It is imperative to exchange this surface orientation for the deeper faith and vision which see only the divine and seek only after the divine. The next need is to compel all our lower being to pay homage to this new faith and greater vision. All our nature must make an integral surrender. It must offer itself in every part and every movement to that which seems to the unregenerated sense mind so much less real than the material world and its objects. Our whole being, soul, mind, sense, heart, will, life, body, must consecrate all its energies so entirely and in such a way that it shall become a fit vehicle for the divine. This is no easy task, for everything in the world follows the fixed habit which is to it a law and resists a radical change. And no change can be more radical than the revolution attempted in the integral yoga. Everything in us has constantly to be called back to the central faith and will and vision. Every thought and impulse has to be reminded in the language of the Upanishad, that is the divine Brahman and not this which men here adore. Every vital fiber has to be persuaded to accept an entire renunciation of all that hitherto represented to it its own existence. Mind has to cease to be mind and become brilliant with something beyond it. Life has to change into a thing vast and calm and intense and powerful that can no longer recognize its old blind eager, narrow self of petty impulse and desire. Even the body has to submit to a mutation and be no longer the clamorous animal or the impeding clod that it now is, but become instead a conscious servant and radiant instrument and living form of the Spirit. Okay, so beautiful description. He's telling you very clearly it's not easy. Okay, so it's difficult, but it's worth it. And he says elsewhere also that you will be surprised yourself as to what you were and what you are becoming if it is done with intensity. Okay, so this first sentence, we have to understand what is meaning. Okay, because there was a very intelligent boy he used to teach computer science. Okay, he's still there. So he could not understand this sentence. So let's see whether we understand this sentence, what is exactly meaning. The first necessity is to dissolve that central faith and vision in the mind, which concentrated on its development and satisfaction and interest in the old externalized order of things. In other words, to put it very simply, the language is very complex because he is taking everything into account. What it basically means is, turn your gaze, we are always turning our gaze outwards. And we have a faith that this is the reality. That has to change. It has to go inwards. That's the next sentence, he tells you that. It is imperative to exchange the surface orientation going outwards. And unfortunately, all your senses are built in such a way that they go outwards. You don't have a single sense which goes inwards. There is one sense which goes inwards, your mind. All the other 5 senses are going outwards. So, that's why we are so outward oriented. Okay, so the second sentence makes it clear. It is imperative, absolutely essential, unavoidable to exchange this surface orientation for the deeper faith and vision which see only the divine and seek only after the divine. So, your attention going outwards has to now start going inwards. That's what basically is meaning. The next need is to compel all our lower being to pay homage to this new faith and greater vision. So, the lower being is your body, mind, life. So, that has to be convinced that your world of appearances is not the reality. The reality is inside you, within you. All our nature must make an integral surrender. It must offer itself in every part and every movement to that which seems to the unregenerated sense mind so much less real than the material world and its objects. Our whole being, he is listing actually all the parts: soul, mind, sense, heart, will, life and body, must consecrate all its energies so entirely and in such a way that it shall become a fit vehicle for the divine. Fit vehicle for the divine? He has to enter. The divine can use your body, mind, life. Remember what happened to Sriramdu on 24th November 1926. Sri Krishna descended into his body. Sri Krishna himself came into his body, descended into his body. So, become a fit vehicle for the divine. This is no easy task, for everything in the world follows the fixed habit which is to it a law and resists a radical change. No change can be more radical than the revolution attempted in the integral yoga. Everything in us has constantly to be called back to the central faith and will and vision. every thought and impulse has to be reminded in the language of the Upanishad. That is the divine Brahman, and not this which men here adore. Not the outward world, but the inner world. Okay? Every vital fiber has to be persuaded to accept an entire renunciation of all that hitherto represented to it its own existence. Mind has to cease to be mind and become brilliant with something beyond it. Life has to change into a thing vast and calm and intense and powerful that can no longer recognize its old, blind, eager, narrow self of petty impulse and desire. It will not even recognize what I was and what I am today. You'll be surprised yourself, he says in a letter. Okay, so even the body has to submit to a mutation. There you are. Even the body undergoes a change. It's not the transformation that he's talking about here. That's different. Mutation. There are changes in the body. And can no longer be no longer the clamorous animal. Very interesting. The animal is making clamor. The vital is clamoring for its desires. It wants its desires and making unnecessary noise. Even the mind is making a noise. All your thoughts are only noise, nothing else. In fact, they use the word noise even in electronics. Noise. The impeding clod it now is, but become instead a conscious servant and radiant instrument and a living form of the Spirit. Not easy, but that's what has to be done. The difficulty of the task has led naturally to the pursuit of easy and trenchant solutions. It has generated and fixed deeply the tendency of religions and of schools of yoga to separate the life of the world from the inner life. The powers of this world and their actual activities, it is felt, either do not belong to God at all, or are for some obscure and puzzling cause, Maya or another, a dark contradiction of the divine truth. And on their own opposite side, the powers of the truth and their ideal activities are seen to belong to quite another plane of consciousness than that obscure, ignorant, and perverse in its impulses and forces on which the life of the earth is founded. There appears at once the antinomy of a bright and pure kingdom of God and a dark and impure kingdom of the devil. We feel the opposition of our crawling earthly birth and life to an exalted spiritual God consciousness. Okay. We feel the opposition. We become readily convinced of the incompatibility of life's subjection to Maya with the soul's concentration in pure Brahman existence. The easiest way is to turn away from all that belongs to the one and retreat by a naked and precipitous ascent into the other. Thus arises the attraction and, it would seem, the necessity of the principle of exclusive concentration, which plays so prominent a part in the specialized schools of yoga. For by that concentration, we can arrive through an uncompromising renunciation of the world at an entire self-consecration to the one on whom we concentrate. It is no longer incumbent on us to compel all the lower activities to a difficult recognition of a new and higher spiritualized life and train them to be its agents or executive powers. It is enough to kill or quiet them and keep at most the few energies necessary on one side for the maintenance of the body and on the other for communion with the divine. So this whole paragraph is not Sri Aurobindo's view. Particularly, one must be very careful. The last sentence, if you read only out of context, it is enough to kill or quiet them and keep at most a few energies necessary. This is not Sri Aurobindo speaking. He is the Mayavadin or the Buddhist who is speaking this. Okay, so we have to be very careful as to what he is saying. In the beginning, you have to not forget what he said right in the beginning. Okay, so the difficulty of the task has led naturally to the pursuit of easy and trenchant solution. The difference between the inner life and the outer life is so sharp that you have a tendency to, if it is so undivine and so perverse, why not get away from it? So the rejection of the physical world is a natural thing. That's what he's saying. The difficulty of the task has led naturally to the pursuit of easy and trenchant solutions. Even in our practical life, we take the easy way out. Okay? With the difficult thing, sometimes we leave for future. So we take the easy way out. Let's do the things which we can do easily first, and then we'll attend to the difficult ones. So here, it's easier to concentrate and get rid of the physical world. So do that. In the physical world, the difficulties are too many. It's constantly pulling you outwards. So don't do anything in the physical world. Trenchant solutions. The word trenchant is clear. Cutting. You have the French word trancher, to cut. So you cut the inner life from the outer life. The outer life you throw away. It has generated and fixed deeply the tendency of religions and of schools of yoga to separate the life of the world from the inner life. Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga both do that. They don't care for the normal life. Karma Yoga to a certain extent uses the physical world as a springboard. They use the world as a springboard and ultimately they reject it. Here is Sri Aurobindo who says no rejection. Get first the realization of the soul and then not escape but come down again. So, the powers of this world and their actual activities, it is felt, either do not belong to God at all or are for some obscure and puzzling cause. And what is that cause? Maya or something else. A dark contradiction of the divine truth. And on their own opposite side, the powers of the truth and their ideal activities are seen to belong to quite another plane of consciousness than that, obscure, ignorant and perverse in its impulses and forces, on which the life of the earth is founded. All religions have this. There is a heaven and there is a hell. There is a Jannat and there is a Jahannam. Okay? There is a Swarga and Narak. So we have, idea is very common that this world is nothing but the contradiction of the divine. So why waste time here? It's there everywhere. In fact, there is a, Sri Aurobindo refers to that, Manichaeanism. Yes. Mani was a spiritual person in Iran, in Persia. And he also said that very clearly, all the perversions of the lower are not created by God. They are created by the devil. So, that's what Sri Aurobindo is speaking about. And saying it's very easy to reject the lower. It's easier to reject the lower and go to the higher only. Much more difficult to accept the lower and change it into something else. Okay, so, divine con. And on their own opposite side, the powers of the truth and their ideal activities are seen to belong to quite another plane of consciousness than that obscure, ignorant and perverse in its impulses and forces, on which the life of the earth is founded. So, actually, that word that, you have to remove that obscure, so you have to read it this way. Are seen to belong to quite another plane of consciousness than that on which the life of the earth is founded. He suddenly put inside another phrase, more descriptive. Okay, so there appears at once the antinomy of a bright and pure kingdom of God and a dark and impure kingdom of the devil. So, antinomy, opposition. Okay? Of a bright and pure kingdom of God and a dark and impure kingdom of the devil. We feel the opposition of our crawling earthly birth. Crawling, you're not walking, you're not running, you're crawling earthly birth and life to an exalted spiritual God consciousness. We become readily convinced of the incompatibility of life's subjection to Maya with the soul's concentration in pure Brahman existence. The easiest way is to turn away from all that belongs to the one and to retreat by a naked and precipitous ascent into the other. He is talking of an ascent, okay? He is talking of the Jnana Yoga. He is talking of not the Bhakti Yoga, because it's an ascent. And that ascent can be naked. You are getting rid of all your clothes. And what are your clothes? Your body, mind, life are the clothes of the soul. So you are getting rid of the naked and precipitous ascent, because you can fall. We say the climbing is a very difficult climb. It's not an easy climb.
Now he's going to give an opposing statement.
Yeah.
The easiest way is to turn away.
Yeah, that's right. The easiest way. That's why most of the yogas do that. Mm-hmm. The easiest way is to run away from that belongs to one and retreat by precept. Thus arises the attraction, and it would seem the necessity of the principle of exclusive concentration, which plays so prominent a part in the specialized schools of yoga. Specialized schools of yoga is talking about Raj Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. You concentrate only on what you want to do and get rid of the rest. Exclusive. Which plays so prominent a part in the specialized schools of yoga. And for by that concentration, we can arrive through an uncompromising renunciation of the world at an entire self-consecration to the one on whom we concentrate. So he has left that one purposely, because it could be the self or it could be the psychic, the divine within you, the individual divine within you. It could be any. For by that concept we can arrive through an uncompromising renunciation of the world at an entire self-consecration to the one on whom we concentrate. It is no longer incumbent on us to compel all the lower activities to the difficult recognition of a new and high spiritualized life and train them to be its agents or executive powers. The word incumbent, necessary for someone as a duty or responsibility, morally binding. That's what the word incumbent means. Okay, so it is no longer. Now he is saying that the others are doing this, we don't care for the body, mind, life. But in the integral yoga, you have to care for the body, mind, life. You are not rejecting them. But in the other yogas, you reject. Okay, no longer incumbent on us to compel all the lower activities to the difficult recognition of a new and high spiritual life and train them to be its agents or executive powers. It is enough to kill or quiet them and keep at most the few energies necessary on the one side for the maintenance of the body. This is in our Indian, they call it Sharira Yatra. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to maintain yourself. So that much you do, but nothing else. Don't do anything else. Just sit quiet in your attic and concentrate. In the Bhakti Yoga, they say, okay, even the little bit of works that you do for the divine, puja, gathering of flowers, offering of this, that much you can do. But don't do anything else. Because any action that you do in the physical world will give you attachment and desire. So if you don't want desire and attachment, don't do any work. Get away from it.
And attachment?
Attachment also. But if you have gone to the forest or a cave, like they used to do in the earlier days, there's nothing to be attached to. There are no attractions in the physical world. When you are in the physical world, if you are moving in the market, you will see TVs and all sorts of things which attract you, or clothes, or different foods. You are attracted. But if you are in the cave or the forest, nothing to attract you. That's why run away from the physical world. Maintenance of the body, and on the other, for communion with the divine. This maintenance of the body, that's to kill or quiet them is the Jnana Yoga path, and the communion with the divine could be for the Bhakti Yoga. If I do puja, I am making a communion with the divine, I am having a connection with the divine. So he has used these words, but that's what he means. Either Jnana Yoga or the Bhakti Yoga, but you're concentrating only on that, rejecting the physical world. But in the integral yoga, it's not like that. That's what he will tell you in the next small para. But we'll just read the two first lines. He says, this is exactly what the integral yoga does not allow you to do. Okay? The very aim and conception of an integral yoga debar us from adopting the simple and strenuous, high-pitched process. We do not reject the physical world.
High-pitched process.
Yeah, high-pitched process. Because you're concentrating. You're doing nothing else but concentrating. Okay.
Namaste all.